Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to your Tuesday edition of the Post Up with David Grubb right here on Boot Crew Media. I, of course, am your host, David Grubb. Welcome to the show. Hope you're having a good week so far. Yesterday, we spent a lot of time talking about the good things about the Pelicans, things to be optimistic about, and particularly just also just big up in the fan base. And I think it's kind of taken off. And again, around the nation, after the discussion that Bill Simmons started about possible relocation in New Orleans, you've seen a lot of outlets and a lot of fans just talking up again about why this should not be the case, why there should be no discussion of New Orleans losing its basketball team. And I'm always glad to see the people of New Orleans and the fans of New Orleans stand up for themselves. That's always a good thing. New Orleans should be proud of who it is. New Orleans should be proud of the people who represent the city, and New Orleans should fight for the things that are New Orleans. So I just want to give, again, the fans and the viewers and those types of folks their kudos for just, fighting the good fight. You've done nothing wrong, and it's time for this stuff to just end. If it ever does happen, it'll happen when it does. But in the meantime, as long as there is no real discussion of this, as long as there's not a sale on the table, as long as there's an arena deal in place, as long as the lease is still here, let's not do this anymore. Let's just move on. And today, what we're going to talk about, we're going to get back to reality a bit and discuss part of the Pelicans roster that has been historically a problem for this team under Willie Green. And that's the bench production. Over the 4 years of the Willie Green era, his tenure as head coach, the average ranking for the Pelicans bench unit goes like this. In points, 22nd over the last 4 years. They've never finished higher than 21st. They've been 22nd, 23rd, and 21st. So that's in point production. Field goal percentage, 25th. Never finishing higher than 21st. Last year, they were 26th in bench field goal percentage. 3-point percentage, 19th. Last year, they were 19th. The best that they've been was during the 49-win season. They were 6th. But prior to that, they were 24th and 27th in 3-point percentage from the bench. Turnovers is about the only area where they're kind of okay. They're they're right about at average in turnovers from a bench. 15 and a half is their average ranking. Last year, they were 15th. Prior to that, even in the 49-win season, they were 23rd in bench turnovers. They've only been in the top 10 once, and that was in 2022-23 when they were 9th. And then 3-point percentage, 19th in 3-point percentage, 3-point attempts, from the bench. So not a lot of attempts, not a lot of makes, not shooting the ball well overall, and then just a very mediocre team as far as point production goes. Like, they're down there with teams like the Knicks and the Magic and the Nuggets, like those kinds of teams that are so heavily starter dependent. And what do you see with those teams is that it takes Herculean efforts from their best player, whether it be Nikola Jokic, whether it be Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, or whether it be whether we talk about Jalen Brunson for the Knicks. So when you have these types of players who have to carry this tremendous amount of load, you see what happens as the season goes on. There's a wearing down of those players, and none of those guys made the finals, did they? And they have yet, and outside of that 1 year when Jokic was getting production from his bench, he hasn't been back to the finals. The 1 year he made it to the finals, the best player in the NBA, is because his bench unit was actually worth something. And then the Nuggets got rid of all those players. The Pelicans have to get production from their bench this season. Their starting lineup is competitive with any team in the league. Yes, their starting lineup will be competitive with any team in the league. Jordan Poole, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson. And for the purposes of today's show, we're going to assume that Kevon Looney is the starter because he's the veteran. We're going to give him the nod today. That may not be the case when the season starts, but for the purposes of today's exercise, that's where we're going to start. Okay, we're going to look at the bench. And the 4 players that you see that we're going to talk about on the bench are the 4 most prominent. They're only going to be, on a nightly basis. There may be nights when they go 10, 11, 12 deep, certainly. And we're not including the rookies here. We talked about them yesterday. So that adds 2 more. You put those 6, that's 11 players. And then you're talking about whomever fills out the rotation as number 12. And that'd probably be Carlo Makovic. So now that's your 12, right? 5 of the starters that we've already discussed. These 4 reserves, Jose Alvarado, Jordan Hawkins, Yves Missi, Saddiq Bey. And then you're also talking about, Carlo Makovic at the end of that bench. along with Michael Peavy and those other players. But when you look at this bench, that's a problem. And I'm not saying for opponents. This bench is a problem for the New Orleans Pelicans. And why do I say that? Let's start with Jose Alvarado. Jose Alvarado has certainly been a player who's been better than what he should be. You know, when you look at Jose, you talk about an undrafted free agent, an undersized player listed as 6 feet, but Jose is not 6 feet. Jose is probably about 5'10". But a guy who has gotten so far every ounce of production out of his body that he possibly can at the NBA level. He finished top 10 in 6 man of the year voting back in 2023-24. So he's had his moments. He's improved throughout his career. Went from a 29% 3-point shooter in his first season to last season at 36%. He's been above 36%, been about 35%, above 36%, over the last 2 seasons. Over the last 2 seasons in particular, he's at 36.6%. So right around 37%. The biggest problem for Jose, like it is with too many players on this roster, are concerns about his health. He's only played 60 games in a season once. Typically, he's been around 55 games in a season. So when you're counting on your primary ball handler from your second unit, your energy guy, those types of things, somebody who's supposed to pick players up 94 feet, create kind of havoc defensively, he's missing 20-plus games per season. And for the Pelicans, as much as they rely on Jose, who has played roughly 20 minutes per game in his career, played a career high last year of 24 minutes. When you look at that, there is a limited shelf span for guys his size. You can only tax them so much. 24 minutes is too many for Jose. The prior year, when he finished top 10 in 6 man of the year voting, 19 minutes. The year before that, 22 minutes. So I think that sweet spot for him is certainly between 18 and 20 minutes. Beyond that, historically, you have seen his production drop off. He gets into positions where physically he just can't hold up. And I think that Jose is kind of like a relief pitcher in baseball. You bring him in, you face a couple of batters, and then you get him out. And it has to be that way, and you use him. They're going to be nice when he's hot, and you let him play when he's making his shots and those types of things. You give him more minutes. But on a night-to-night basis, the biggest problem the Pelicans have is that they have not had a dependable second unit point guard with size. And that will still be the problem this year, because I can't imagine a scenario where Willie Green goes to Jeremiah Fears as his first point guard off the bench under any circumstances while Jose Alvarado is still on this team. So if that's the case, and you're playing second units where Jose is the primary ball handler, and you're shifting now, let's say the shift is over to Jordan Poole moves to the 2. Let's say Trey is at the 3, Zion's on the bench. You've put in Carlo and Derek Queen at the 5, Carlo at the 4, Derek Queen at the 5. Let's say that's your second unit that you're going with in this circumstance. The problem in that group is that how does Jose initiate the offense with those guys? You immediately have to look at other guys as their ability to initiate offense, because Jose's not great at post-entry passes. He's not great. He's done better at probing defenses and getting into the paint to create, but he's not a finisher there. Very few of his shots come within 3 feet of the rim. He's primarily a 3-point shooter at this stage because of his size. And that is a bit of a problem. When you have a guard who can keep his dribble live, which Jose absolutely can do, he can keep his dribble live. But for his career, the last 2 seasons, less than 14% of his shot attempts are coming at the rim. That's very different from early in his career, where almost a quarter of his attempts, his first 2 seasons, were coming at the rim. He has to be a 3-point shooter. That's true. But Jose also, at his size, has to put pressure on defenses. He has to get opportunities at the free throw line and utilize his ability to get in the paint and create more assist opportunities for himself as well. Those kinds of situations are where his value is really going to be tested. And the Pelicans have to start thinking about what is Jose's future going to be, because after this season, Jose has a player option for 2026-27 at $4.5 million. Is he going to be worth that $4.5 million in 2026-27, considering the needs that you still have. This is a team without a draft pick again next year. Could that space be better spent on another free agent? And if that's the case, you need to start thinking about trading Jose Alvarado now. Prior to the deadline, you need to move Jose Alvarado to a team that can use him. Because I think that him coming in at $4.5 million at the age of 28, which is what he'll be, I believe, at the start of that season. You know, we talk about the Herb Jones value. I think Herb Jones is far more valuable. I think if you said, is Herb Jones 4 times more valuable than Jose Alvarado? Yeah, absolutely. I think Jose is replaceable. That's not to discredit what he has done in New Orleans. Again, I say off the top of this, he has gotten everything out of his NBA career possible, and he probably can be a contributing player for a few more years in this league. He's not a dumb basketball player. He's a high basketball IQ, but he is limited in the things that he can do. Certainly, his relationships with the other players around him is important. Certainly, his relationship with Willie Green is an important factor. But ultimately, I think Jose's immediate future needs to be something that the Pelicans are very concerned with, because I think that they need an upgrade, and it's been a big problem for them that ultimately, when a guard has gone down, when you've needed some assistance in the backcourt, Jose as a starter hasn't worked. So if Jordan Poole does go down at some point, if he misses a few games, do you feel comfortable with the only 2 guards on your roster who can be your primary ball handler at that point guard position? Let's say if Jordan Poole, this is before DeJounte Murray is declared healthy, if it's November and Jordan Poole sprains an ankle and he's out a week, if the only 2 point guards you have on the roster are Jeremiah Fears and Jose Alvarado, Pelicans are in trouble. So I think that when you think about Jose Alvarado, you have to think about him as a luxury item and as somebody that you can keep when you're doing well. But as the Pelicans get deeper into this with the players that they do have in the roster, and you've got to free up those minutes in the long term for Jeremiah Fears. You've got to remove the impetus to him becoming the best player he can be. And ultimately, I think Jose is someone who will stand in his way. I think you allow Jose to be here during the first half of the season to be a steadying presence while you see what Jeremiah Fears can do. But at the earliest opportunity, the moment that Fears shows you he can handle some of that load as the backup point guard, then that's when you need to start thinking about moving beyond Jose Alvarado and looking for other options at that backup point guard spot. That's just my thought there. The more difficult proposition, and I think people who watch this podcast, and they know how I feel about Jordan Hawkins. And again, this has nothing to do with the person, but I think Jordan Hawkins has been a disappointing player in his career. His games played went down. From his rookie year to his sophomore year, his field goal percentage was down. His 3-point percentage significantly down, even though his attempts were significantly up. His overall effective field goal percentage down. His free throw percentage down. His rebounds only slightly up, though his minutes were up by more than 6 per game. His rebounds, his assists only slightly up. 1.2 assists his sophomore year, 1 assist his rookie year. He doesn't play defense. He doesn't block shots. He turns it over as often as he makes the assist. And it's just that Jordan Hawkins has not done anything to distinguish himself as an NBA caliber shooter, as an NBA caliber defender, as someone who can handle the basketball, as someone who understands what a good pass is, as someone who is physically prepared on a night-to-night basis to play 2 guard in the NBA. Where are you seeing this ray of hope? And I know folks will go back to his rookie and say, Jordan was doing fantastic till Willie sidetracked him. Okay, let's go deeper into those game logs. And I think what you'll see is more inconsistency than you remember. There are far more nights when Jordan Hawkins shoots it poorly than when he shoots it well. The number of games with multi 3-pointers and shooting above 40% are very low. He has fewer of those games in his career than Antonio Reeves had last year. Okay, just for perspective. And so to me, Jordan Hawkins as a first-round investment has just not worked out. You need dependable shooting. And I showed you the bench numbers already for the Pelicans when it comes to 3-point shooting. Last season, they were 19th. in 2024, they were 6th in 3-point percentage off the bench, but that's because Trey Murphy was primarily coming off the bench and he shot over 40%. So I think in that case, yeah, Trey Murphy dragged everybody up, and you got some good shooting overall from the bench for the Pelicans. But that's an anomaly for this team. The turnovers are too high. Jordan Hawkins is a turnover person. The 3-point attempts, he got 6 attempts a game last year as a reserve. That's a good number of attempts. And he couldn't make them. He was given the opportunity to get wide open shots. Couldn't make them. Can't score off the dribble. Doesn't have a floater game. He just hasn't developed. It is critical. There may not be another player on the roster. And, because for everybody else, it's about their health. Everybody else, it's about their health. You know their games. You know Zion Williamson can play. You know Trey Murphy can play. You know Herb Jones can play. They are not question marks as far as their playing ability. It's just, can they be healthy for 70 plus games? But for Jordan Hawkins, health is one question because of his back issue, which is never a good sign for an NBA player. Back, feet, neck injuries are the worst possible injuries that you can have as a basketball player. It's never going to get better. I think it's going to inhibit his ability to gain weight because you can't lift weights the kind of way that you'd like to when you have those kind of lower back injuries that he does, one that can't really get better over the course of his career. So what is Jordan Hawkins' future with the Pelicans? Because you already have a Jordan who does what he does and better in Jordan Poole. Antonio Reeves was a better shooter and was, as tall and bigger than Hawkins as well. The pressure is on. The only reason I think he's still around is because they invested a first-round pick in him, because they've not extended him. His contract does go into next year, where he gets $7 million in 2026-27. And again, why would you, if you're the Pelicans, why would you want to pay that when you have real needs on this roster? If you could clear that money, that's $11 million between Jose Alvarado and Jordan Hawkins that you could use to upgrade players. And we saw this year that there are a number of middle-class players that just have not been able to be signed because teams have not had the cap space and have been squeezing those players out of the league. So for the Pelicans, I think that there are options for them outside to improve this team. And I think if you're going forward as an all-in group, your bench has to be older. You've got your kids now in Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen. You can add one, each year as you find them. But I think the rest of your bench around Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, all these guys at the starters needs to be more experienced if you want to be a real playoff contender. You're going to have to spend that money because you already missed the window on developing your young players as a group. That window started when you started drafting Zion and that group. And now you only have 3 left, Zion, Herb, and Trey, over the previous 5 years. You have Zion, Herb, Trey, and Jordan Hawkins. That's it from the previous 5 years. So it's a difficult situation for Jordan Hawkins. I get that the team wants him to do better, but I don't see a real path in his career for him to become the kind of player, in New Orleans at least, that people would like to see him be. He hasn't shown the willingness on his own to make himself indispensable on the court. Maybe he's matured. Maybe he's figured it out. Maybe this offseason he's going to come back as a better and more complete basketball player. But at the very least, if he does nothing this season well, the one thing he has to do well is make 3-point shots. And if he's not shooting above 38% this season, Jordan Hawkins has to go. I think that's just the reality of the situation. Moving on to Yves Missi, I think he's the easiest person to talk about here because, honestly, if his role is on the bench, if he gets moved to the bench and Kevon Looney is the starter, there's still no pressure on Yves Missi. Like, his job is the same whether he's a starter or on the bench. It's to rebound, it's to defend the goal, and it's to score easy buckets. I don't ever want to see Yves Missi taking a 15-foot jump shot. It's not necessary. Dunk everything. If it can't be done quickly, it shouldn't be done. When he catches the ball, either he should be able to turn over his shoulder for a short jump hook, he should be able to lay it in, he should be able to dunk it, or he needs to kick it right back out. If you can't get in that move immediately, or take we've seen him do effective with the one dribble and get into it and just go. But when he starts pump faking and trying to be Akeem Olajuwon on the block, that's just a disaster for him. Keep it simple, stupid. Like they tell you in life, keep it simple, stupid. Just do the things that you do well during the season. In the offseason, work on expanding your game, bring that one element back for the next year. But as for right now, the Pelicans don't need Yves Missi to do anything but be big. Do the things that big players do. Block shots, rebound, score easy points in the paint. If Yves Missi does that, it doesn't matter what his final stat line is, because even if he reproduces last year's stat line, if he gives you 9 points and 8 boards and more than one block every night off the bench, you're happy with that. You're happy with that. If as a starter, you want to get into double figures, you want it to be a double-double guy every night, 13 and 10, somewhere around there. But off the bench, if he's giving you 8 points, 9 boards, or vice versa, 9 points, 8 boards, I'm good with that. I think Yves Missi, he had a terrible showing in Summer League as far as his offense went, but he played good defense. He did block shots in Summer League. So that part of his game has not changed. I think that the coaching staff just needs to simplify for him and tell him, look, we don't need you to be dynamic. We just need you to be consistent and effective. And if he understands that, as a big, he should reach his stride around year 4. And once you get to that, you'll start seeing the best of Yves Missi. But for right now, keep it simple. Do the things that you're really effective at and help this team, particularly on the defensive end, because that's where his biggest responsibility is going to be. When he's off the floor, he's going to be when he's on the floor, he's going to be the most important interior defender that the Pelicans have. And he's got to step up there. He's got to make good decisions. He can't get into foul trouble. And he's got to grab rebounds with 2 hands. He's not great at catching the basketball, grab those rebounds with 2 hands. The wild card on the bench this season is clearly Saddiq Bey. And Saddiq Bey is a guy who gives you versatility at that position, can play some 3 and some small ball 4 at 6'7", 220 pounds. He's a guy who in this league has been pretty good as a shooter. Coming off his worst shooting season, though, in Atlanta when he was injured, he was only shooting 31% from 3. But for his career, he's a 35% shooter on more than 6 attempts per game. So, can fill a volume shooting role off the bench as a guy who's used to starting, but also has come off the bench plenty in his career. Started 82 games for Detroit. And when he did that year, he was able to average 16 points per game, 5 boards, 3 assists, while shooting it 35% from 3 and 40% from the floor. He needs to be more efficient, particularly in scoring off the dribble. But if he is a standstill shooter, if he's able to knock down the 3-point shot consistently, he'll have value. He can defend. He can be a multi-positional defender. But he has not been a great defender in his career. We have to be honest about that. When you look at the defensive ratings, when he's been on the court during his career, they have not been great. He has played on some poor teams, certainly. But his individual numbers, as far as his on-offs and things like that, have not been spectacular. He's been a below-average player as far as efficiency goes. He's been a below-average player overall, just slightly below, but overall a below-average player when it comes to, producing wins across the league. So Saddiq Bey is a wild card. If you're getting the best of Saddiq Bey, he can be a very effective player for the New Orleans Pelicans. He could be a difference maker some nights. I think what the Pelicans are hoping for is that he fulfills the role that Najee Marshall left vacant. And if he can give you that, now I don't know if Saddiq Bey is going to have the same type of tenacity, that Najee Marshall played with. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. But I think that what he can do is bring some similar skill sets, the ability to handle ball on the open floor, the ability to stretch the defense, and the ability at 6'7", 220 to finish at the rim. The bench is one of those, it still remains a concern. We haven't seen Saddiq Bey play in over a year. From the videos that people have seen, they haven't been particularly impressed by them. But I think, this is a guy who needs to work himself back into NBA shape. We'll see how much they use him during the preseason, because I think that you should see a lot of Saddiq Bey minutes since the guy hasn't played in a year. We should see how he gets himself acclimated to his new teammates, because you don't have a long training camp anymore. So how quickly in game situations does he get himself acclimated, and what kind of aggression does he bring to the floor after missing a season due to injury? Is he mentally recovered to the point where he's aggressive when he's on the court and making plays for himself and his teammates? That is a question mark. So when you look at those 4 players there, and you look at those 4, 3 of them come with question marks. Yves Missi is more of a statement there because we kind of know what he's going to bring. But everybody else has a major question mark when it comes to health. All of these guys have missed significant amounts of games in their career. All these guys have a question mark when it comes to consistency. And all these guys have a question mark as far as their role fits as this team goes forward. With Saddiq Bey, you only have him on a 1-year contract. So the Pelicans, it's not a major risk if it doesn't work out. Yes, he's, certainly has a relationship with Troy Weaver. But if it doesn't work out, the Pelicans are not beholden to keeping Saddiq Bey. I don't think that an extension for his contract is on the horizon. I'm sorry, he has 2 years remaining on his contract, excuse me. $6.1 million this year and $6.4 million next year. But if Saddiq Bey does not produce early this season, then I think that he would also be a candidate to get moved around the trade deadline. If you're Pelicans, then I think you're just trying to gain assets. I don't want a bunch of players back at that stage. If I'm moving guys like Saddiq Bey, if I end up moving Jordan Hawkins, if I end up moving Jose Alvarado, what I want is tradable assets back. What I want is draft picks. You know what I'm saying? If I can get second rounders, I don't care. I want draft picks. I don't want to bring back salary. If you're the Pelicans, what you need is more flexibility going forward. And I think the bench is where you're going to have to find it, because they have heavily invested now in these starters. You've made a heavy investment in Jordan Hawkins. You've made a heavy commitment to Zion Williams. You made a heavy commitment to Trey Murphy, and you've made a heavy commitment to Herb Jones. So your starters are locked in. The Pelicans are going to sink and swim with that group. The way to get flexibility is by moving this bench around. You've got 3 young players that you want to develop in Yves Missi, Derek Queen, and Jeremiah Fears. Ultimately, that gives you 7 of your 8. You add Kevon Looney into that mix for at least this year, and the player option for next year. That's 8 players. So you have 4 players on your roster that you can continue to manipulate if you work this bench unit properly. And again, I think that if you get older, taller, players who can play at these positions, particularly point guard, you need a better backup point guard. A veteran who doesn't necessarily need minutes but can mentor Jeremiah Fears. I think that's a goal for this front office, that it needs to be, is to find a veteran to mentor your young point guard. And I think you need to find more experienced shooting, people that you can count on off the bench who will knock down shots. And I don't care if it's a one-dimensional shooter on the bench, because you're going to survive your bench minutes with your offense, not your defense. Not in this NBA. If you can't continue to make shots when your second unit on the floor, it doesn't matter how good a defensive team they are. And you've seen that with the Denver Nuggets in particular, because their offense goes stone cold as soon as Nikola Jokic is off the floor, and they cannot manufacture points. They're still solid defensively, but they cannot manufacture points. And that's where the Pelicans have to generate offenses on that second unit. They have to be better than 22nd in the league. Because the starters have missed so much time, you have to have a more dependable bench than other teams. And that is going to be a test for Willie Green. How do you assemble this bench? How do you utilize this bench? And can they be an asset rather than a liability? And for the past 4 years, they have predominantly been a liability for this team. We'll see what happens. All right, folks, that's going to do it. I'll be back on Thursday. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, share as well. Leave your comments below on what I've been talking about. Leave your questions as well. That may help for Thursday's show. We may address some of those and get into that as well. In the meantime, you can find me on social media at DM Grubb, on Instagram, on Twitter, and you can find me on Facebook, Blue Sky, and TikTok as well. Till the next time, this has been the Post Up with David Grubb on Boot Crew Media. I'm David Grubb. You're you. See you on Thursday.